Hey everyone, it's Sebastian Torres. Recently I watched this short film called Slice of Life. If you haven't checked it out, it's on YouTube and it is amazing. It's a Blade Runner, not a fan film of Blade Runner, but it kind of has that feel. So it's very like futuristic, like the world is gone to shit, everyone's trying to, like, I don't want to spoil it. Anyways, you should watch it, definitely check it out. It's on YouTube. And it gave me the idea because they made the entire thing using small models, like old school way, right? Which is great. It gave it a real, like, authentic sort of look. And so I thought to myself, could I do that using Blender and ComfyUI? So what I would do is I would build the models or the shapes in Blender, send that to ComfyUI, and then let ComfyUI paint it for me. So, add the detailing, and then I could throw it back into Blender, and then that way it would circumvent me having to paint it, because really when it comes to texture painting, I'm not the best at it. I can do a little bit, but not as much as like you would need in order to make these things look realistic. Now, in saying this, you wouldn't use it for, let's say, a hero building, so a building that's directly right in front of the camera, like when you're doing a massive establishing shot. But you could definitely use these to fill in the backgrounds. To a certain extent, you could get close to the camera if it's like a dark sort of setting. It just depends on what exactly you plan to use it for. So let's have a look in Blender. I'll show you exactly how I went around building the intro to this video, and let's see what we can learn from it. So I've just started up Blender, and this is what you start up with every single time. You'll have your camera, your light, and a cube. You can actually get rid of the light. We'll keep the camera for now, but we'll probably change where that is in a moment. And one thing that we're going to need to do is the cube, when it first starts up, is 2 meters by 2 meters. I'm not sure what that'll be like in feet, 9, so maybe about 10 feet. So we actually need that to be much larger, and that's for the depth pass, because we're going to send the depth pass into ComfyUI. So we need it to have a little bit more depth to it. So what I'll do is I'll scale that by 5. Before I do that, let's go to this. So transform pivot point. We'll change that to 3D cursor. That way, whatever we do in the beginning, it'll actually do it from the 3D cursor as opposed to the center of the model. So scale that by 5, and you can see that it's still on the ground plane, which is exactly what we need. So let's change this. Let's go over to edit mode. Okay. Now, what I want to do is, you can pretty much do whatever you want in this, because it's like meant to be futuristic buildings. There's really nothing to stop you from just going mental with it. Just keep in mind that it's good to start simple, and then, actually let's switch this back over to individual origins. It's good to start a little bit more simple, and then kind of build from that later on once you have a little bit more textures involved. So it's a matter of just, creating random shapes. Doesn't have to be perfect. And then we'll just add a plane on the ground. That way it'll cut it off. Okay, because it's rather large, what we can do now is grab the camera, and you'll see that half of your model is gone. And the reason being, that if we go into the camera settings here, you'll see that the camera clips at 100 meters. So let's change that to 5,000. I wouldn't do that for everything, but sometimes it helps. So in the view, let's change it to 5,000 as well, just so we don't have any issues. And now, if we go back into the camera and choose camera to view, let's just move this around so the camera's in the full shot, and we'll change the resolution to 19. Actually, let's go 1024 by 1024, because we're going to be sending this to ComfyUI. It'll just make it easier than having to change everything around. Now, as for the length of the camera, I'm going to go with 100. That way there's less distortion, less curving, and cool. All right, now we're going to be doing this in Eevee. So when you start up Blender for the first time, it's going to go into Eevee anyways, so there's nothing you really need to change there. Let's go here and click on Z. So now let's go into compositing, use nodes, and we'll render once. Okay, now we've rendered once. Let's go into our depth. We'll click normalize, and then invert the color, color ramp, and we'll send this to a view node. So viewer, there we go. And there is our depth pass. Now you could probably make the ground plane a lot bigger. Firstly, we need to actually lock off our camera. And the way to lock off our camera, so we don't screw it up, is select your camera. And let's just go to our object properties. And I'm just going to lock it off on every single axis. So in that way, if I have camera to view, I can't do anything. Like no matter what, I can't move it. And that's crucial because later on, we're going to need to project it back onto the cubes. And so once I'm done with that, let's turn off this. And what we're going to do is I'm going to delete this. So what I need is to just kind of align that. It doesn't have to be perfect, but I just want it to be there. And then I'll delete this. Cool. And we go back to compositing, you'll see that all we have is the squares. So that'll be a depth pass, and we're also going to need a canny pass. And the way we do that is actually quite simple. We'll go into grease pencil, scene, and you'll notice that now we have line art, which is great, very handy, but we also need a couple of other bits and pieces. So we click on the line art. I'm going to bring this back down, probably to 2. Still there? Yep. Okay, so I just want it to be really fine. Like I don't want it to be too overpowering. And we'll switch this over to a white. And then we'll give our actual box an emission shader and set it to black. Cool. Compositing. We'll take our image. We'll do an alpha over. Alright, from there what we're going to need is a file output. Okay, let's go to node, properties. We're going to add another image. And so we'll go with the first one, we'll call it canny. And then depth. And buildings. Actually, we'll go buildings 2 because I've already got a buildings folder and then it might get confused with the other files. And then we'll put the canny in here. Brilliant. So let's just render that. And let's go into buildings. Oh, where'd that go? Okay. So it gives us a line. The reason why I wanted it to be nice and thin is because the thicker they are, it just influences the image way too much. I want it to tell the image what's going on, but I don't want it to be perfect. And then we've also got our depth pass, which is great. It's showing us really great separations, which is exactly what we need. Okay. Now, what I'm going to also do is I'll go into this and I'm going to add some lines because we're going to need them later anyways. And then what you can do is select this and then right click, mark freestyle edge. And I'll show you what that does in a moment. We'll just add a bunch of loops to this. And let's say I want to add some sort of window here. Let's imply that with this. Maybe do a cut across here. All right. So then when we render it, it should, oh, hold on. If you're in edit mode, it won't render. So if you're in out of edit mode, see now it's added line art to those sections that I've added. There we go. So you can do that all the way around if you want, add as much as you like, but it's not completely necessary to do the entire thing. So in ComfyUI, this is going to be a rather easy workflow. So we're going to do checkpoint loader, and we'll do the one that I usually go with, which is the one with the noise select. Search V2. So we'll go to the 3 view, search IP adapter. I think there's an advanced one that you can use as well, but I'll just go with this one for now. Okay, so IP adapter plus 1.5. All right, we're going to go with SDXL for this one. So go with this one for now. Load our clip point. And here's one thing. If you're going to be using SDXL IP adapter and it's not the standard one, so this is just the standard one here, the IP adapter SDXL. Let's say you're using this VIT-H, there's a couple other ones as well. You need to use the 1.5 clip vision. So the PyTorch model that you downloaded, you need to use the original, the 1.5, not the SDXL. So that's quite crucial. We'll do a load image. So what I did was I found this image from Blade Runner, just to give it some idea of what I'm after. Positive, negative. Now we're going to need a couple of control nets for this. Apply control net, and we will use the ACN one. First one being the depth, and you're going to need the SDXL one, so just keep that in mind. Same with the canny. I'm not sure what will happen if you mix and match the full, medium, and small. I just use the same one. And from there, we'll go to our K sampler. You can use the advanced K sampler. I don't really like using it, but that's fine. We'll go with 45. Keep this at fixed for now. We can go randomize later and then just let it kind of create a whole bunch of different versions of the same building, and that way you can kind of pick out which one you like most. Okay, so I'm gonna go with 8 for our CFG, DPM2, Keras, leave that at 1. Okay, and we're gonna need an empty latent. Set that at 1024 by 1024, and before I forget, we need to actually load the right model. So the model that I'm going to be using is the Juggernaut XL V9. You can pretty much use whichever one you like. I like that one. And we'll go with Futuristic building, city, Blade Runner style. Cool. Pretty simple. I don't really put anything into the negative prompt. You can if you want. Depending on what comes up, if there's something that you want to get rid of, you can type something in there. Okay, so what we need is to load the images for this. It can be our depth. Then we've got a canny. Alright. And we'll send our latent over to the K sampler. And let's just do a preview. So we'll go decode VAE. Send this over here, VAE. And then we'll preview that. I'm not going to save it just yet, just in case it comes up crap. I don't want it to be starting to fill up the hard drive for nothing. So there's one more thing that I forgot that I need to use. And we'll load a LoRa up. You can download this model that I'm about to use. It's called Future Urban XL. There's 2 versions that I found, or 2 postings that I found. So I just downloaded both of them to see, and they're pretty much the exact same thing. Okay, so we'll connect the model. Okay, so not loving it. Let's try again. This time I am going to reduce the influence of the control net. We'll just reduce it down to 0.7. Actually, let's reduce this as well. So we'll go 0.7, 0.33 for noise, and then we'll reduce that to 0.7 and increase that to 0.1. Yeah, that should do. That way it's not overpowering. The problem with the IP adapter is it can be a little bit too powerful. It'll try and use that image pretty much verbatim. That's much better. As you can see, it's added like glow lines, which is great. I'm actually quite happy with that. All right, so let's say you are happy with that. Okay, so we're gonna go from the image, search, super. All right, so you're gonna make sure that you've got the right model selected for this. So it's the ones that super V0F or 0Q. And as for the actual model that we'll be using the same one that we just used. Let's go with the V9. All right, we'll double this. This is going to take a little bit in the beginning, but it's actually not that long. It could be a lot slower. And everything else, aside from the prompt, everything else should be as you need it. You don't need to do anything else with it. So let's change the prompt. We'll add that to it. And from there, we'll do this save image. And I'll bring over this preview just so we can see the difference. And this is going to take a while, so I'll cut to when this is done. So let's have a look. By comparison, we got a lot more definition, whereas the other one it's a little bit more murky. Here we have much sharper lines, which is great. This is exactly what I need, because I'm going to need those squares, and I'll show you why in a second. So now let's go back into Blender, and if you go into the camera view, we can actually switch off the line art now. Go into compositing, and we'll turn off the file outputs. And we can just go over here, do this. And now when we select it, we'll create a new material, Principled BSDF, and we'll actually go into the shader view. It's actually easier this way. And the base color, we'll add an image texture, Control T to bring up the mapping, and we're going to need to load up our image. And what we'll do is go into edit mode. I only want to select what I can see, so I don't want to select anything else. So let's go see, and I'll just deselect everything I can't actually see from the camera's point of view, because I'm going to add those textures in later from a different point of view. And it just becomes a little bit confusing if you've got a whole bunch of mixed up textures. This one's fine. Let's keep this one so then I can connect it later. So we basically have all the faces that are facing the camera. And we'll go project from view. Get out of that mode. And let's see. Oh yeah, duh. Let's apply that. Now sometimes when you do this, you'll notice that you'll have very bright edges, and it's really easy to fix that. You just go to the UV editor, and if you have something like that going on, let's say down here, I'll show you. See how I've kind of clipped that? What I can do is just G, Y, and then just bring that up just a touch. You'll lose some of that detail on the edging, but you don't really need it. Okay, so with this one, we'll just go to the material view. As you can see, it's black on one side, but on the other side we have the detail we need. This is where Eevee actually comes in handy. I've got to figure out how to do this with cycles. It's not as easy, I don't think. So we'll send that into color ramp, and we'll go emission, color, send that in there, and then we'll bump up the emission to like 10. Is that too much? About 5. That's right. Okay, so then we can just come in here and just change the glow color. Now I'd like to get these to come up a little bit better. So what I might need to do is actually do a bit of image editing. Let's just copy this. Make sure to click this button, that way it doubles it up. And that way cool. Alright, so let's put that on the second one, and on this one we'll bring this back down. Switch this back over to linear. Perfect. Now we don't have too much information here, but that's easy to bring back actually. All we need to do is add a light, really. So let's just go with a sunlight. And just boost that up to like 15. Once we're in the rendered view, you see that we actually do have that information there. It's not gone. Now you can actually see, here's the issue why I said that you can't really use this for a hero building. The reason being that Stable Diffusion does not do lines that well. Whereas from back here, it looks amazing. You know what I mean? So you have that issue. Now we're going to fix this section here because this is bleeding onto this one. So what I can do is select this one, select that. It's going to select only the bits and pieces that we have. And we can go to UV editor. Actually, let's just select this section here. So scale it on the X, scale it on the Y, and just bring it over. Just takes a little bit of fiddling around. What we're going to do is just select that, proportional editing. Cool. And that way it doesn't bleed through to the bottom one. Looks like we have windows there. So like I said, you can look at this from far away and then you kind of have like a building, which is pretty cool. Now obviously I don't want that crazy amount of light on the top. What we can do is go to the top and we've got that one selected. We'll go project from view, back to UV. And just so we can see what we're doing here, you see that we now have those details that we've got here in the front. You can pretty much use anything else. Like if there's something else that it's rendered on the side, you can use that as well. I just prefer to use something that's actually on the building. And this doesn't have to be absolutely perfect because we're going to run it through ComfyUI again. Well, I am. You don't have to. So it kind of gave us those lines that we need. So let's say you weren't going to run it through ComfyUI again. What you can do is just go back to layout. Whoops. Go to your editing. That's why it was screwing up. So this needs to go back to black. And we just add details. So like you can do something like that. You can even add, this is completely unnecessary, but let's say Shift D. We'll add a little bit more detailing. And we can add a wireframe. So then from afar, like it just looks like you got more details. And on this, you can actually add bits and pieces to it to kind of give it some light. For instance, it's a building, right? So it's meant to have a light right at the top. So let's give it a circle. Nope, not a circle, sphere, sorry. We'll add a sphere. You can make it red, you can do whatever you want with it. Let's pump that up. We'll save it as our color pass, and what I'll actually do is get rid of the alpha channel, because obviously ComfyUI doesn't really use alpha channels. We'll load our color channel, and then once we have our color channel loaded, we'll actually go in code, we'll send our VAE back in there, and we'll send that through our K-sampler again. So there's a good chance we're going to have to reduce this down to 0.4. So I'll do that now, because or else it's going to change everything completely. And I don't want it to change everything. I want it to stay as close as possible to what we originally had. Yeah, see what I mean? It's gone completely all over the place. So let's try again. And the only reason I'm doing this pass is in case I can get some more details in there, and then that way I can overlay it with what we already have and then have a little bit more information on the image. And it's not completely necessary, but let's say you wanted to do, oh, that looks nice. Yeah, see, it just adds a little bit more information, which is fantastic. Not completely necessary, but I'll take it. So let's activate this again. And again, it's going to take a while, so I'll cut back to when it's finished. Sweet. All right, let's save this and we'll load it. Now there's a couple of ways we can do this. Let's go to our original. So that's our original. What we can do is basically copy everything. Oops. And we'll just change this image and we'll put the other one on there. Okay, once we have that one in there, we can actually do a mix shader. Go into the texture mode, and then that way, let's bring this back to 0.5. So as you can see, the system isn't 100% perfect, but in a pinch, you can use this to like fill in the background of like a sci-fi sort of setting like this. And then that way, you don't have to build them from scratch like actual models. So if you just need to fill in the background, it's 100% a doable way to do it. It'd be good if you have an actual idea of what your setting is going to be like. That way you can control where the actual light comes from in the image that you send to ComfyUI. That way the sunlight will match every single time, and that way you'll be able to control it better. You can obviously do this also with vehicles. So if you've got vehicles that you need to fill into the background, it doesn't have to just be buildings. It can be all sorts of things. It can be trash bins, something like that, like like dump masters. I don't know what you call it where you are. So if you guys want to see more of these, me showing you how to use Blender, let me know in the comments down below. I'd like to get into more videos in Blender, but I don't know if that's something that you guys are interested in. I'll be uploading these files to my Patreon so you can download them along with the ComfyUI workflow. This way you guys will be able to use this in your own workflows. You can use these buildings, do whatever you want with them, edit them, change them up. You can actually reuse this image and create completely different shaped buildings, and then that way you have an infinite library of buildings. Now, as I was saying, you can actually do this in ComfyUI. You don't have to just use this shape building or this color building. So let's go into ComfyUI just one more time, and we'll go with a batch of 4 increment. We'll go 1 for the denoise. And so now it'll take a little bit longer because it's going to create 4 in one hit, but you'll also notice that they'll be completely different. Cool. All right, so here we are. As you can see, we've got 4 different versions of the exact same building. It just gives us options. Like even here, like you can see, like it's giving you this little car, like, so you can do vehicles as well. So like flying vehicles. So for something like Blade Runner, that'd be perfect. And you can actually take bits and pieces from this building, add it to another one. For instance, if you like the front or the facade of this one and you want to add it to the one that we've already got, you can do that as well. You don't need to feel like you're stuck on one specific version. So I hope you guys enjoyed that video. If you're new, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. That way you can stay up to date with the videos that I'm uploading. I'm trying to upload once a day, but at least once every second day. That way you guys can stay up to date with everything that I'm doing. Also learn some bits and pieces from both Blender, ComfyUI, sometimes Automatic 1111, depending what it is I'm working on. And in the next video, I'm going to be working on actually adding blinks to the face fusion. So you probably saw that a couple of videos ago where I was doing face replacements with face fusion, and I believe that I figured out how to actually add the blinks to it. So check that out in the next video, and I'll talk to you guys next time. See ya.